The first rule of dating in your 40s is to be wary of profiles that look too perfect. The beautiful, much younger women. Either bots, sellers, or after a green card, it's just the game. So when I saw Amara's profile, I almost swiped left out of principle. But something in her eyes, it wasn't asking for anything. It was offering something. I swiped right. And that single, skeptical swipe unraveled every prejudice I held and led me to the most humbling moment of my life. Sitting in a living room in Nairobi, being asked for a bride price to prove my intentions were real. My name is Mark, and at 48 I thought I had Tinder all figured out. It was a marketplace of curated illusions. The adventurers who never left their hometown. The good vibes only people who fell apart at the first disagreement. I'd built a successful architecture firm. I could spot a shaky foundation from a mile away. And after my divorce, I'd built walls around my own heart with the same precision. Tinder after a divorce is less about connection and more about a series of polite, disappointing interviews. I had a checklist: stable, independent, age-appropriate. And then I saw her, Amara, 25, Nairobi. And in a moment of weakness or maybe clarity, I broke every single one of my own rules. I matched with Amara, a 25-year-old from Nairobi, and she didn't just knock on the door. She dismantled the entire gate, brick by painful, beautiful brick. Our first conversation was a masterclass in disarming my defenses. I expected small talk about travel or music. Instead, she asked, "What is the one thing you've built that you are most proud of, not as an architect, but as a man?" No one on Tinder had ever asked me that. We fell into a rhythm. Late night calls for me, early morning for her. I'd be winding down with a scotch in my silent Seattle high-rise. She'd be sipping tea on her balcony with the sounds of a waking Nairobi as her soundtrack. I was fascinated by her world. She was a graphic designer, brilliant and ambitious. She spoke of her family not as an obligation, but as her source of strength. She called her mother every single day. I found myself questioning my own biases. The gold digger narrative I'd constructed in my head didn't fit. She was more financially independent than some women I dated in Seattle. The green card theory crumbled when she talked about her deep pride in her country and her plans to build her business there. The digital bubble was perfect, but reality has a way of popping bubbles. The plan was for her to come to Seattle. I'd booked the ticket, but a week before her flight she called, her voice laced with an anxiety I'd never heard. "Mark," she began softly, "my family, they know about you, they are happy, but they are also concerned." "Concerned about what?" "I'll take good care of you," I said, slipping into my protector role. "It is not about that," she said. "It is about respect. In my culture, for a relationship to be serious, the man must come to meet the woman's family." "Mark, my family. They think it is bad luck for a woman to travel to a man's home before he has met her family. They say it looks desperate. They say you must come here first. You must ask for their blessing." The request felt like it was from another century. I was a 48-year-old man being asked to ask for a blessing like a teenager. My own family thought I was having a midlife crisis. My daughter hadn't spoken to me for a week after finding out Amara's age. The safe, orderly life I had built was being upended by a tradition I didn't understand. In my culture, the man must sit with the elders. It shows his intentions are honorable. They will want to discuss the mahari, she said. "The what?" "The bride price," she explained gently. "It is not a purchase. It is a sacred tradition. A symbolic gesture from my family to yours and yours to mine to show that this union is valued, that it is supported by both sides. It seals the covenant." My mind recoiled. Bride price. It sounded archaic, transactional. Every cynical bone in my body screamed that this was the red flag I'd been waiting for. "This is where the real ask happens," a voice in my head whispered. But I looked at her face on the screen, so full of hope and sincerity, and the voice of my cynicism was silenced by a louder, more powerful one. the voice of a man who was, for the first time in a decade, truly in love. "I'll come," I heard myself say. 2 months later, I landed in Nairobi armed with skepticism and a heart full of hope. The moment I saw her, beaming at the arrival's gate, the hope won. But it was short-lived. The Nairobi heat was a physical shock, a thick, humid blanket after the crisp Seattle air. Seeing her at the arrival's gate, real and solid and even more beautiful than her photos, made my heart soar. But the soaring was short-lived. The next day, I was ushered into her family's sitting room. The air was thick with the scent of incense and formality. Seated in a circle of power were her father, her uncles, and a community elder. After polite introductions, her father, a man with a kind but unwavering gaze, leaned forward. "Mr. Mark," he began, his voice calm but firm, "we welcome you to our home and into our family story. Now let us discuss the Mahari. What is your family prepared to offer to show they are honorable stewards for our daughter's future?" I felt the eyes of everyone in the room on me. I marked the architect, the man who commanded boardrooms, was utterly speechless. I had no blueprint for this.
From the moment I saw Mark's profile, I knew he was different. He wasn't posing, he was thinking. His eyes held a story I wanted to read. When we matched, I felt a thrill I hadn't felt in years. The men in Nairobi, even the good ones, often felt like boys playing at being men. Mark was a man, solid, grounded. Our online courtship was a beautiful dream. I loved hearing about his world, the precision of his work, the quiet love for his daughter, the way he was trying to piece his life back together. He was so steady, a calm harbor after the chaotic seas of dating in your 20s. I shared my world with him eagerly, the vibrant chaos of Nairobi, the ambitions that burned in me, the deep, roots-down love I had for my family. He seemed to cherish it all. But a part of me was always anxious. How would this man of quiet spaces and orderly timelines handle the beautiful, demanding orchestra of my life? When I told him about the Mahari, I held my breath. I could feel his hesitation through the screen. I saw the Western misunderstanding flash in his eyes, the reduction of a sacred tradition to a simple transaction. I prayed he would see past it. When he said he would come, I wept with relief and love. His arrival at Jomo Kenyatta Airport was a moment of pure joy, but I saw the shock in his eyes as we drove through the relentless energy of the city. I saw him flinch at the noise, the density, the sheer aliveness of it all. My happiness was tinged with a protective fear. The meeting with the elders was a disaster I had foreseen, but hoped to avoid. I watched Mark sit there, a polite smile frozen on his face, but his eyes were those of a trapped animal. He was trying to process everything through a lens of contracts and logic, completely missing the emotional and spiritual currency being discussed. When my father spoke of the Mahari not as a single event, but as an ongoing process of weaving families together, contributing to a younger cousin's education, a gesture symbolizing his commitment to our family's future, Mark's face went blank. He was hearing a list of demands, not an invitation into a covenant. The tension built over the days. He was overwhelmed by the constant presence of my family. A simple decision required a committee. His prized independence was being suffocated by our communal way of life. The fight that broke us happened after a long, loud family dinner. I found him outside, scrolling through emails from Seattle, a ghost of a man haunting the edges of my vibrant life. "You seem a million miles away," I said. "I'm just tired, Amara. It's a lot, all these people, the constant performance." His word choice felt like a slap. "Performance? This is not a performance, Mark. This is my life. These people are my heart. You are not an audience member. We are trying to bring you on stage with us." "And what if I don't want to be on stage?" he retorted, his frustration boiling over. "What if I just want a quiet life with you? This feels less like joining a family and more like fulfilling a list of obligations." The word obligations shattered something in me. He had reduced the most profound aspect of my identity, my connection to my family and heritage, to a burdensome checklist. The man I loved saw the core of my being as a problem to be managed. The tears came then, hot and swift. "Then you do not love me," I whispered, the truth of it crushing me. "You love an idea of me, a version that fits neatly into your quiet life in Seattle. But that woman does not exist. I walked away, my heart fracturing into 1,000 pieces. The days after he left were the darkest of my life. The silence in our messages was a void. I had gambled my heart on a man who saw my culture as a barrier, not a bridge. I started to believe my family's initial concerns were right. Maybe this was an impossible divide. Maybe some loves, no matter how real they feel in a digital dream, are not meant to survive the hard light of reality. I was in my studio trying to lose myself in work when my phone rang. It was Mark. I almost didn't answer. His voice, when I did, was raw, stripped of all its usual confidence. Amara, he said, the word a plea. I was wrong. I was a proud, foolish man. I was so busy trying to fit you into my world, I didn't even try to understand yours. I'm sorry, please. I'm ready to listen. Truly listen. The sincerity in his voice was new. It wasn't the voice of a man trying to win an argument. It was the voice of a man who had lost something precious and was finally realizing its worth. A fragile, dangerous hope began to flicker in my chest.
The flight back to Seattle was a 9-hour torture chamber of my own thoughts. I replayed every moment, every misstep. I saw the hurt in Amara's eyes not as an overreaction, but as a justified response to my own cultural arrogance. My daughter's words echoed in my head. You were trying to build on her land without learning the soil, Dad. She was right. I was an architect who had arrogantly tried to impose my blueprint on a foundation I hadn't bothered to survey. My apology call to Amara was the most vulnerable moment of my adult life. It wasn't a strategy, it was a surrender, and her okay was a lifeline. What followed was my real education. I wasn't just learning about her culture, I was learning to respect it. I hired a tutor to learn basic Kikuyu phrases, not to impress but to show effort. I scheduled weekly video calls with her mother using a translation app and asked her to tell me stories about her childhood, about what family meant to her. I learned that the Mahari was a process, a dance of respect that could take years, designed to slowly, carefully weave two families together. It was about demonstrating commitment through action, not just writing a check. I began to see the profound beauty in it. In my world, marriage was a contract between two individuals. In hers, it was the creation of a new branch on an ancient family tree. It was about creating a network of support so strong that no single couple could ever truly fail. The weight of my first marriage might have been lighter if we'd had such a web to hold us. Months later, I returned to Nairobi. This time, I didn't come as a tourist or a skeptic. I came as a student, humbled and eager. I asked for a second meeting with the elders. The atmosphere was different. I was different. I began in my broken but earnest Kikuyu. Naturwo, I said, I am sorry. Then switching to English, I looked her father in the eye. The last time I was here, I spoke the language of business. Today, I hope to speak the language of family. I did not understand the Mahari. I saw a transaction. Now I understand it as a conversation, a promise, a way of saying, your daughter is so precious to me that I am willing to honor the village that raised her. I am ready to have that conversation, not as an obligation, but as a privilege. The shift in the room was palpable. The formal tension dissolved. The conversation that followed wasn't a negotiation, it was a collaboration. We agreed on a path forward that was meaningful to their traditions and respectful of my circumstances. It was about gestures of goodwill, promises of support, and a shared vision for the future. It was, as Amara had said, a covenant. On my last night, her father took me aside. He placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture of pure acceptance. You came to us the first time as a stranger, full of fear, he said through a cousin. You return to us now as a son, full of respect. You have our blessing. The blessing wasn't for the agreement. It was for the journey I had taken to earn it. Dear friend, if you like this story, let me remind you to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any interesting story. I went on Tinder looking for a distraction. I found a mirror. Amara reflected back all my fears, my biases, my walls. And instead of walking away, she patiently held up that mirror until I was brave enough to look and humble enough to change. The swipe introduced me to the woman I love, but the journey to her family's doorstep taught me how to be the man she deserves. And that was the greatest gift of all.